Yoritomo built this giant Buddha, now famous throughout the world, but his real legacy was the code that he required his warriors to follow. He ordered his samurai to live lives of simple frugality, to have no fear of death, and to serve him, their absolute master, with unswerving loyalty. During this peaceful age, the best swords were the products of imperial support for the art of sword-making. The cloistered emperor, Go-Toba himself, was an accomplished swordsmith. He called in the best smiths of Japan and had them restudy all sword-making methods of the past. Their great accomplishment was to develop a new two-piece body for the blade. Until this time, swords were made from a single piece of high-carbon steel. These imperial smiths soon learned to insert a soft core of low-carbon steel into the sword. The sword of the samurai became even more flexible while retaining its razor-sharp edge. This time of peace was the age of the classical samurai and the golden age of the Japanese sword. But this fragile peace was soon shattered. In the year 1274, a terrible danger appeared on the horizon. The Mongol hordes of Kublai Khan, the conqueror of China, in an invasion fleet of over 800 ships with 30,000 seasoned battle troops. Charged down onto the beach and yelled out their customary challenges for duels. Their challenges were answered with hails of poisoned arrows and gunpowder bombs. The Mongols were surprised, however, at the desperate strength of the samurai and their sharp swords that somehow cut through their armor like a knife through butter. And then suddenly, a terrible storm swept into the bay. Their fleet was destroyed by a typhoon. Expecting a second invasion, the Japanese constructed an enormous defensive wall on the beach where they expected the Mongols to land. Sure enough, they came again, this time with 4,000 ships and over 200,000 men. The samurai defended the beach fiercely, preventing the Mongol force from landing. But the force was too large. But then, amazingly, for the second time, a typhoon swept in, destroying the entire Mongol fleet. 2/3 of the Mongol invaders perished. Thus, Japan was saved from invasion twice. This convinced the Japanese that their land was protected by the gods, and they honored the storm with the name of Kamikaze, or Divine Wind. The samurai learned a great deal from their battles with the Mongols. On the beaches, the blade, not the spur, had saved the day. And so the stress on mounted archery lessened, and over the next century, the samurai became a swordsman who fought on foot. The long tachi cavalry sword was replaced by the shorter infantry katana, which was worn edge upright so the samurai could draw and slash in a single stroke.
これは腰に刺す刀のスタイルです。そして反りが非常に少なくなってきている。ということは馬上線で上から切るんじゃなくて腰に刺して切るからそんな大きな反りはいらないわけでしょう。そしてこの時代からだんだん剣道というものが発達してきたから、そして突きも出てくる。技の中の一つに突きがある。それは反りがあったら邪魔になるから反りがなるべくないようにしたと。こういうことでスタイルが変わってきた。
The battles with the Mongols taught the samurai another thing. The tempered edges of their supposedly perfect swords often chipped. Correcting this defect was the triumph of one of the greatest swordsmiths who ever lived, Masamune.
これは外国の方でもよくこの刀鍛冶の名前というのは知ってると思いますが、政宗ですから、非常に政宗というものは数はそんなにありませんけども、歴然とやはり各大名家みんな持ってましてね、つまり硬い地金、柔らかい地金、それを非常にうまく使い分けて別格な味を出している刀鍛冶です。日本刀を語るのに政宗についてまず名前が出てくるのは政宗でしょうね。
Masamune heated his blades to over the critical temperature of 750 degrees Celsius. Next, he welded 3 pieces of steel of different carbon content together into a single blade. The samurai sword had at last been perfected. Japanese swordsmiths all began to copy Masamune's methods. The swords made by the master smith, Muramasa in particular, were legendary for the sharpness of their cutting edge. So sharp were these swords that they apparently made the bearer go mad with bloodlust, almost as if the very effectiveness of the blade forced it to be used to kill. Armed with these perfect swords, the samurai could almost magically cut through a person in a single fluid stroke. The culmination of a samurai's rigorous training became the ability, without conscious thought, to execute this perfect attacking stroke. This stroke could only be perfectly executed if it were done with an empty mind, the no mind of Zen Buddhism. Now, no mind may seem like a mystical concept that only the samurai could master, but in fact it's something that most of us do every day. For example, anyone can type by the hunt and peck method. But touch typing is much faster, and you don't have to look where the individual letters are. In fact, you almost forget where they're located. This loss of memory while retaining a practiced skill is a perfect example of no mind. Practicing this stroke became a kind of meditation, a way to develop discipline and character. Some say you can see a pale residual image of this perfect no-mind stroke at Japanese driving ranges. In the swings of countless golfers who spend endless hours trying to perfect their stroke, even though they rarely, if ever, play on a golf course. One samurai in particular was held up as the ultimate example of the virtue of loyalty to one's master, Kusunosuke Masashige. So total was his loyalty, so effective his resistance, that the emperor was able to return from exile, defeat the shogun in Kamakura, and reassume power. But this legendary samurai loyalty usually had its limits. The temptation of power was too strong. In the century after the Mongol invasion, proud samurai warlords, many with imperial blood in their veins, aspired to be shogun. The prize was there for the taking for any warlord who could seize and hold it. This led to the Sengoku Jidai, the age of the country at war, the inevitable result of the previous 1,000 years of Japanese feudalism. A war of all against all engulfed Japan. The name of the samurai became synonymous with the most flagrant examples of brutality. New and more formidable castles were raised. Treachery and cowardice were widespread, and there was a great reliance on espionage. Samurai, with their code of honor, could not be expected to undertake these covert tasks.